6 boys, but yeah, and God knew that I should start with boys.
All right, welcome everybody. Time is now 6:30 on April 17th. We are here for a select board meeting and our public agendas with BHP and the junkyard ordinance public hearing. We'll start as per usual with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now move us on to our roll call of board members. Dave Hemingway, Chair of the Select Board.
Normandy Blake. Marlo Herrick.
All right, and for announcements, a couple brief things just for public announcement's sake. It is that time of year, so if you are doing something like using a blower to clear off leaves and things around your yard, please make sure that you are not leaving that in the road. It's dangerous for the motorcycles and the bicyclists, of which there are many now showing up. Secondly, the time of year is pertinent, not today, but it has been fairly dry over the past few. So you may have noticed that with winds and the dryness, there have been actually some fire warnings to not run fires. But I will take that as a moment to remind everybody that fire permits are a thing, and if you need them, go down to the firehouse on Wednesday to pick them up. Beyond that, we have, I'll turn it over to our assistants over here.
Would you like to remind people about White Plains Road?
Yes. Can you provide all of the pertinent info in case it has changed?
Proper dates.
Next week, the bridge, the culvert on White Plains Road is being replaced. White Plains Road will be closed at that point. So you need to do a detour. Or else drive very fast, I'm not sure which.
Have a ramp, need a ramp.
But anyway, that should take a week. They're gonna be, it's the 24th, the week of the 24th to the 28th. So it's quite exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Very much.
And do we have any other announcements?
Other than the canoe and kayak races will be next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That's always interesting.
Where do they go out of?
They go right up here, right behind,
Right behind the school?
Basically behind the sand shed,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
they go
the
down
sand-
to
the
just
school.
past the Pearson Park area.
Okay.
it's very interesting, though, I have to say. I wouldn't want to do it.
It's a neat race to watch.
Yes, it is.
And most of them are fairly happy to explain and show people things, especially kids. So
Great.
it's a good time. All right. So moving along, that moves us to our first appointment, which is the Clothespin Bridge update.
Sure thing.
Take it away.
Good to see you all. My name is Greg Goodrich and I'm with VHB. Quick show of hands, how many of you have been to a previous public meeting on this bridge project? So almost everybody, okay. So there is some stuff that I'm gonna kind of cover here for, it will be pretty swift, but I just want to kind of make sure that everybody's kind of calibrated and up to speed. So bear with us. So with me today actually is Taylor St. Peter, so she's a project engineer on this project. The rest of the project team that's behind the scenes, Julie Whitmore. Julie's been with us on a few of these project meetings in the past, and she is the lead project engineer. Pete Walker is our lead environmental task lead, and Lauren Chavinky is our technical QC engineer. Abigail Morgan is one of our bridge engineers. Kyle Durso is one of our senior bridge engineers. And then this gentleman, Bob Landry, came to us about 3 years ago. He's actually the former Bureau Administrator for the Bureau of Bridge Design at New Hampshire DOT. He was there for 31 years, and he's been with us now for about 3 years now. So he's a great resource for us in a lot of these projects and whatnot. What goes behind the scenes at New Hampshire DOT, he knows it, he's lived it. So if there's any questions about, procedure, that kind of thing from New Hampshire DOT, if I can't answer it, we always obviously turn right to him. So anyhow, that's the project team. Quick overview of the agenda. We're just gonna talk about a brief description of the project, and we'll give an update and status overview. We'll talk a little bit about the scope of the work, remaining schedule, and next steps, which I know is really what's on everybody's mind here. We're coming down close to the end here, and things are really gonna start heating up for us. We have a set date in mind for advancing to construction, and so that's really, the end game is really within sight here, so we'll touch on that. I know this is not a very, it's kind of washed out. Project location, I know you all know where the project is. So over the Blackwater River on Clothespin Road. And so you see Detour Road and Frost Lane on the other end of the bridge, so the bridge is right in the middle. So the existing bridge, again, not gonna dwell on that, I'm sure you all are very familiar with it. It's coming out, it's gonna be removed entirely. And it's a 65-foot span. We'll touch on, Taylor will touch on what the proposed bridge is going to be. So the purpose and need of the project is to replace the structurally deficient red-listed bridge. Obviously, we know it's in pretty tough shape and it's seen its day, so we're gonna replace it. The last time we met, this graphic may look familiar to you. Obviously, it's a very small scale. We have an electronic version of this. If we want to bring it up and look at it in more detail, we certainly can. Nothing has changed in terms of the impacts that we presented to you all in the last meeting. So we did a good job at locking all that down. So everything is kind of moving forward based on that. So the last time we did meet was actually a year ago tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's gone by pretty quick.
Yeah,
it was
right.
April 18th, believe it or not. I had to double check that, and sure enough. So since then, a lot has actually happened from a funding standpoint. Received a notice that there's available federal funding. So this project was originally going through the state aid bridge process, which is not federal. There's federal underpinnings to that, but it's no strings attached. It's all state and town money. It was an 80-20 split. Okay, so 80% state, 20% was coming from the town. But with this update to federal, they've offered for this project 100% federal funding. So in other words, the town share, the 20% split, no longer required, which is huge for the town. Naturally, I mean, that equates to a cost saving of roughly $400,000. That's taxpayer money that doesn't need to get put into that bridge. So that's really, really good news. So the design phase, which is where we're still at, that is still the state aid bridge 80-20 split. So that does not change. The trigger here is once we move into construction, that's when everything begins the federal process. And I know, Dana, you recently went through the process to get certified a week or so ago, and pretty eye-opening, I'm sure.
Yes, it was.
Listen, it's very involved. So at any rate, so that's what we're doing. What we're doing in design right now is getting everything up to speed and in line with the federal process, so that when it goes into construction, all the boxes are checked, and we just move straight into construction. So, which is actually good that we're not in the LPA process on the design side, because that would stretch things out even more.
What's LPA?
Local public agency.
Okay,
So the local public agency in this case would be the town.
okay.
So state aid bridge, you're still serving as an LPA type role, but it's not federal. Federal is the LPA designation. So in any event, we're still with the state aid bridge through to the design phase. Once we move into construction, then it goes federal. Then we have to all the OFC compliance, all that kind of fun stuff. So that's when things change from a funding standpoint. So we'll talk about the update to the project schedule a little bit later in the presentation. The status overview, where we're at. So initiation and data collection, that's all been complete, obviously long ago. The engineering study is complete. Preliminary plans is complete. And permit development, we're in the middle of doing a lot of this right now, actually getting towards the end of a lot of the back and forth there. And Dan, I believe you've been copied on a number of those coordinations here
Yes.
recently, and you kind of see things moving a little bit more fluidly now. We're starting to get that.
Yeah.
The NEPA categorical exclusion, which is one of the federal requirements that we've been having to step through. That's something that's kind of going through the process now, and we're working to get that in. That has to be complete prior to going into construction. And there's a distinction there, I won't complicate things in terms of if we were doing 100% if we were doing federal through the design process, that's the hitch that drags things out even longer, but in any event.
And what is that? NEPA?
NEPA is National Environmental Protection Agency, that's the A I was looking for.
There's
Environmental
always
stuff.
one of them out there.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about the historic section 106 in a moment. So final contract document development, that's ongoing. That's what we're doing now in terms of developing the plans, the contract book. We were talking to Dan a little bit a while about that specifically prior to the meeting here. Utility coordination is ongoing. Taylor will update you on that. And the right-of-way process, which I know is something that's very near and dear to most of you here, in fact, that's upcoming, and we have a gentleman lined up to do that work. So we'll be reaching out here shortly to step through that process. And then we'll be on project advertisement, and then ultimately construction.
I just have a quick question,
Sure.
just because I'll lose it. So on the project where, you know, coordinating with the landowners,
Yep.
is that underneath the part that we are 20% of, or is that the full?
That's a good question. I believe, I'll have to confirm that. I don't know exactly where the line is on that, to be perfectly honest, in terms of whether it's the 80-20 or whether it's the 100%. I want to say it's still under the 80-20, but I'll have to confirm that with our New Hampshire DOT project manager. So let me follow up with you on that if you don't mind. Yeah. I don't want to tell you it's 100% state and then have to put my
Well,
foot in
I
my
understand
mouth.
that,
But
but
it's an important question.
But it's an interesting setup of that,
It
you
is.
know, where is our 20% and where is
Yep.
it the 100%?
I can tell you for sure it's construction, okay? And the only thing that I need
Meaning
to.
as we're building it,
Yes.
but any of the other paperwork and things leading up to it, we have to pick up 20%.
Anything in the design phase is 80-20, and the distinction is where does the right-of-way fall? Is the right-of-way technically under design or construction?
Right.
You know, typically speaking, we handle that under the design phase. Whether that is in fact considered design or construction is something we'll have to get clarification
Okay.
on. Yeah. Because typically, from a design perspective, we just do it. We don't really, doesn't really matter to us, and it's usually the state that's working all that through. But in this particular instance, you know, we've hired a firm to do that work for us, to be the agent. So we're doing a little bit more. If it were a state project, the state would be handling all the right away. So it's a little bit different in that respect, but, you know. So we will follow up. To talk a little bit about the project scope, I'm going to hand it over to Taylor, and she is going to enlighten me.
All right, so I'm just going to give a quick project overview, and we have some snips of our proposed plans, and I'm going to just run through with you guys. So to start with our scope, so we're proposing a 107-foot long single-span bridge. As part of our construction, we'll also be replacing 2 culverts that are underneath the roadway currently. And then also we'll be doing some approach roadway reconstruction related to tie everything in nicely to the new site. And then also there's some aerial utilities that are in the area that conflict with our proposed construction, so those will be relocated as part of our project. So I'm sure a number of you have probably seen this before, but this is a snip of our proposed bridge plan. So it's kind of hard to see, but within here is where the existing bridge is. So you can see we're kind of going offline a little bit and improving on the curvature going over that bridge. So the east abutment is going to be rebuilt in about the same spot that the existing abutment is. However, the west abutment is going to be built beyond the existing abutment, so that's why we're increasing our span. It's currently about a 65-foot span, and we're going to a 107, and that's to meet our hydraulic requirements and stream crossing rules. And then you'll also see the approach roadways over here. We're doing some roadway work to the approaches, reconstruction, then up Detour Road and down on Frost Lane too, here to tie everything in nicely.
Okay, jump into
Yep.
it just a split second. So, just want to point out, we mentioned 2 culverts are being replaced, so there's one under Frost Lane,
Yep.
that's one. And then D, we were talking about your property, that ditch that's going to be filled in. So that will go to a catch basin and then cross underneath the road.
Yep.
There's currently a pipe that's in this vicinity right now. We're gonna upsize that slightly
Yep.
and can replace it.
Yeah, there's also a culvert that goes across Detour and feeds that. I don't know if that's part of it. It's right at the edge of my driveway.
Okay, yeah, we might not extend that far up, would be my guess, but we can confirm.
Hard to tell from.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think our limits kind of end right at the edge of the driveway.
right before
Yeah,
you-
so it should be right before.
Yep.
And then this is our proposed elevation view of the bridge. So again, we have a 107-foot span. Our proposed superstructure is steel girders, and it's going to be founded on reinforced concrete spread footing abutments. And then we'll also be installing some riprap down the bank and around the wing walls to prevent any erosion in the area. And then this is our Clothespin Bridge Road profile. So you can kind of see, and again, it's a little bit hard to see the existing, but over here, that's where the existing bridge abutment is on the east side. And we're going to be raising the roadway about 2 feet over there. And then on the west end of the bridge, so the other side, we're raising the roadway about 3 feet. So by doing this, we're really improving the sight lines coming down the road, and also really just smoothing out those vertical curves within the road, because there's currently kind of like a sag curve in here. It kind of creates a hump coming down that roadway. So users on the top of the hill now will be able to see better of who's on the bridge. If there's vehicles on the bridge, it's going to improve those sight lines greatly. And then here's a comparison of the existing bridge section compared to our proposed bridge section. So as many of you know, the bridge is currently 1 lane, 18 feet, rail to rail. We're proposing 2 10-foot lanes with some 2-foot shoulders, with 2-foot shoulders on each side. And then we will also have, it's right here, we're gonna have a raised concrete platform. So that's for any pedestrians in the area, fishing platform, that sort of thing. So there's a safe place for those people to go. And then we'll be installing bridge rail on either side that will be powder coated.
and there was some back and forth, if you recall, on whether that was gonna be a shoulder or a raised platform, that kind of thing. And the state, to over widen that, they didn't wanna make it a shoulder if it's gonna be used by people to stand and, like fish off the bridge, that kind of thing. So that was the impetus for making it. It's not a sidewalk, mind you, it's a raised platform, very specifically. So that was kind of the reasoning behind that, but that's all in the project and moving forward.
So how wide is that platform?
6
Couple
feet.
6 feet.
Oh, 6 feet, oh, wow.
Yep,
Plenty of room.
yep, yep.
And the overall bridge is 20 feet?
The overall bridge width.
Yeah,
So out to out of overall bridge width, 33 feet,
okay. Including the 6 feet?
Yes.
including the 6 feet.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you said 33?
33.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 2 10-foot lanes and 2-foot shoulders,
Okay.
not including the sidewalk, raised platform.
Yeah, raised platform. And then we wanted to show kind of a comparison of the roadway alignment now looking east, and then we also have this proposed roadway simulation of what it will look like when it's built.
Does not show the platform,
I was
however.
gonna say, where's that?
Yes,
Where's the
so
raised
this
It
line?
does not,
prior.
imagine there's a shoulder
Yes.
there that's a little bit.
Which side is it gonna be on?
So it'll be on this side here.
The right side,
Yeah.
yeah. Which is the downstream side,
Right.
so if
Yep.
you're fishing.
Now, it looks like you've, flattened out Frost Lane, so they don't have, and you kind of flatten the road, so it's a lot, because a
Yes.
lot of people have hit that bridge abutment more times in my lifetime, more times than I wanna say, but.
Yeah, so the roadway is gonna be raised quite a bit in the area of Frost Lane, so it's really gonna tie in nicely because it's going upwards.
Okay,
So,
yeah, that's good.
yeah, it'll improve some site conditions there as
Yeah.
well, definitely. And then also just wanted to touch on traffic control for the project. So Clothespin Bridge Road will be closed through traffic during construction. So we're gonna be utilizing a detour. It's about 4.6 miles long, and it's using, let's see, Battle Street up here, and then Pearson Hill Road, Pleasant Street down here, and then Detour Road as well. And then I'm now gonna pass it back off to Greg, and he'll talk a little bit more about timeframe for road closures and construction schedule.
Any questions on kind of the scope of the project before we get into some more of the details on what's coming?
Regarding the detour there.
Yep.
I was under the impression that because it was including all, like that intersection at Detour, that for at least a decent portion of it, we would also have to be using the further portion of Pleasant Street, which is the dirt portion. Is
Yeah.
that no longer true? Like, are you not doing as much to that?
We can look at staging that, you know, I mean, really the critical aspect here is closing the bridge down itself to tie in to Detour Road. They can keep traffic moving, flowing through there and just stay on the bridge. Then when they go to tie in the road, kind of do that earthwork, they might, depending on when that happens, they might even be able to, we'll have to take a look at that, get them over the bridge at that point and then tie in Detour Road lastly, because that intersection is getting a little bit wider. So they can kind of have a little bit of flexibility in how they're gonna handle cars through there.
Okay.
So that's something that we can look into, but I guess if they needed to, then yeah, that would be the fallback to take them down that extension. Yeah.
But you're not feeling like that will have to be.
Not
unless
for
something
any long
happens.
duration, no. Certainly it's the long duration, we say several months would be this route that you see here. That's critical for the bridge itself, not so much for the intersection. But, yeah. Okay, so there's a few things that we wanted some public input on as it relates to when we're developing the contract book and telling the contractor, okay, this is the time frame that we're interested in doing construction. The more flexibility that we provide the contractor, you know, the better that will be for their bids. But then, you know, in terms of what the town would like to see or any restraints that you guys have or concerns, we can kind of tailor that a little bit to put restrictions in the contract. So I just wanted to kind of get some feedback from the select board, from the public. So is there a specific time frame that the town does or does not want the road to be closed for construction? What we've heard in the past, obviously we know school, you know, school bus routes, that kind of thing. The duration of construction is going to be such that you're going to get into that no matter what on either side. You know, if we do construction through the summer naturally, then that would reduce the amount of time the school buses are running. But there's no getting around. We're going to start it in the spring and end it in the fall. We're going to start it in the fall and go through winter and end in the spring. It's going to be kind of one of those situations. And it's important for us from a permitting perspective too, because there's time of year restrictions on when they can and can't work in the water. And so those are all things that we're kind of coordinating now, in addition to, like I said, in the bid book and guiding the contractor and when they should be doing this work. So a few things to go along with that. So we're anticipating about a 7-month construction duration. And that will vary a little bit depending on whether it's over the winter or through the summer. And then another thing that's key here that I wanted to point out is, and we touched on this in the last meeting, that at the time, steel procurement, fabrication, and delivery was about 12 months from when they place the order to when steel is arriving on site. So that's a year. And basically everything is going to kind of set on that. And we contacted some of the fabricators recently to see if any of that's changed because of, you know, COVID, that was kind of in the peak. And they informed us that has not changed. And I said, okay, how about in the fall? And he says, we don't expect that to change. So that seems to be pretty firm and real. So when we're looking at, and we'll get into more of the actual time frame of when we're advertising and how that will impact when they're going to actually do the bridge replacement, but we wanted to point out that's real. The in-water work restrictions, we touched on that briefly. And then some other considerations are paving and final restoration. If they construct in the wintertime, obviously they can't finish the bridge in the winter because they have to pave and they have to do some final restoration and whatnot before they can demob off-site. So
Isn't the cost in the winter gonna be more? But I guess it doesn't matter what.
So it's interesting, and what we've seen on a few projects recently, because contractors are pretty busy, they're actually looking for work that they can do in the winter.
Okay.
Because traditionally, you know, a lot of contractors will be doing work during the normal construction season, and then if they don't have enough work in the winter, then they'll have to lay off some of their labor force. They don't want to do that now because they have a hard time getting it back. You know, so that's real too. So a lot of contractors that we've been talking to, they're like actively looking for winter work.
Okay.
So that is a thing. Now for this type of project, it's a big enough project that I don't think that's going to be a sole concern. In other words, and because of, you know, the duration of the project and then the steel delivery, when it would actually be constructed. It's not like if we went out to bid, unfortunately, we go out to bid this fall, they're not gonna be building it this spring because they won't have steel. And you don't want them to close the road for over a year, So that's, you see how it's pushing out and then it comes back, you push out for the steel and then you work back to when you want them to start, and then you set it based on what their actual construction duration would be if they were just getting on site and then working it through the whole way. And not getting on site, doing a portion of it, getting the abutments in place, and then having to wait for several months until the steel shows up. That's what we don't want. So, that's kind of what's happening there. So it's not necessarily more, it's less efficient for contractors, but sometimes they give you a break.
Well, I was thinking
Because
concrete would be more too, because of winterization and.
Yeah,
That's
so there is more work involved. They have to heat for doing winter concrete, but for abutments, they're big pours like these. There's a lot of mass in the concrete, so they can easily, wrap it, and if they have to heat it, sometimes they don't even have to heat it. It's generating enough heat on its own. But they will have to enclose it and all that kind of stuff. So, but we've done a few projects where literally the contractor, that's exactly their approach, and they asked for being able to do it during the winter, and we were able to. Sometimes you can't for various reasons, but this particular structure, because it's steel, they like to do a lot of the steel work in the winter too. That can be a thing. So there are some advantages, and we feel for this project it's a possibility if the town is okay with that. If you guys don't want it closed during the winter, you don't have to. We can make it a spring to fall construction and leave it at that. So I'll ask folks, is there any desire or a strong inclination one way or the other? I don't know if there are any, and if not, then that's fine too.
I guess my comment would be that I think it's taken care of, because unfortunately it looks like construction is actually pushed out to 2025 for the actual bridge portion.
Yep, yeah, winter 24 and
My
25.
concern was gonna be don't close it during elections, because we have a fairly active town for that, but
Yep.
that's not gonna matter then.
Well, so here, if it were winter work, it might, okay? Because the time of year restrictions, I was actually just talking to Pete, our environmental guy, and if I'm getting too in the weeds, I apologize in advance, just tell me to move on. But there's a time of year restriction that starts October 1st and goes through July 5th. That's the typical window, and during that time period, they do not want you working actively in the water. So in other words, if we're taking out the bridge abutments and we need to put cofferdams in the river, they don't want you putting in a cofferdam after October 1st, or they don't want you taking it out between October 1st and July 5th. So if you're gonna start on July 6th, you can get in the water and you can take it out on September 30th, but they don't want you outside that typically, which is too restrictive for this project. So what we're talking about, and where is the soft spot and where are they willing to negotiate? And our feeling is that they would be willing to bring up that July 5th date and make that into May or maybe even April, but they probably won't want to push out the October 1 date. So if we want to do winter construction, what we'd end up doing is allowing the contractor to close the road in September, and they would be putting in the cofferdam and taking the bridge out in, we'll say, late September. That's how that would work. And then they would be able to take the cofferdam out, we'll say, late winter, early spring. Okay, and that's why that construction duration would change a little bit, because they wouldn't be able to pull the cofferdam out until probably, we'd have to negotiate this with the permitters, but it could be like April 15th or April 30, and then they'd be able to wrap up the construction from there on out. So if that were the timeline, you'd probably be looking at like a July end of project, when they're all wrapped up and out of there, would be my guess. It could be a little sooner than that, but there's still quite a bit of work once they take the cofferdams out, get the steel in, put the deck on, do the pavings.
So are you saying that would be, because it seems like because of the 12 months, that would be like end of winter 2025, not 2024?
Yep.
Now, I'm specifically talking about the large election.
Oh,
for
in 24, yes, no, would not affect,
Yeah.
yeah. In any case, so thank you for the clarification, I was just thinking November, not what year, but you're right, 24 is the general election, right? So, yeah, we would be outside of that. What they would be doing, early construction tasks, so for those who are paying attention to things like northern long-eared bat, that is no longer protected. The northern long-eared bat is now on the endangered list. And what that means to projects like this is if you have tree clearing, you have to do that in the winter. So so what would happen, and that's one of the reasons why we also wanted to advertise in the fall, so that way we advertise, we get a contractor on board, say in November timeframe. The first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna go out there in the winter of 24, 25 and clear trees. Get those out of the way, okay? And then they would come in, and then there's some utility relocation, and that would happen too. So unless you wanted them to build in the spring of 25, in which case they might not do anything in 24. You know, they might do the utility relocation in 24, but they might not do the clearing. But if they're gonna actually do demo starting in October, they can't do the tree clearing then. They have to wait till winter. So they would do that first thing in 24, 25. Clear trees and then do the road closure in October or actually September and work through the winter. So that's probably, because they'd have to get their cofferdams in place before October 1st. I don't know if that's clear. I know it's a little odd, but yes.
Going back to the bat, if it's on the endangered species list, it's protected.
Yes.
Okay, you said it.
It was on a protected list before. It wasn't considered endangered.
Yeah.
Now it's in fact endangered.
Right.
Yes. So
how-
it's,
How does that affect?
yep. So prior to it being endangered, you would just have to go to a site and clear it for bat habitat. And they would say, we don't see any trees here that are typical bat habitat, therefore, go ahead and do your clearing whenever you need to. But now that it's endangered, they're not even taking that chance. Because if you don't see bat habitat, but there is some, and you mistakenly kill some, you see what I mean? So that's why they're mandating that it doesn't matter what time, you know, whether you have bat habitat or not, you can't clear except for in the winter, when they're not roosting.
Oh, I see. So it seems like the months for this project are dictated by the steel,
Yep,
the bat,
yes.
and watering.
In water work, yep.
Yeah.
And paving as well. We're threading the needle in a lot of areas. There's a lot of things that we're trying to keep our eye on in terms of what we're trying to do is minimize the impact to the road, you know, to the town in terms of the closure. And then also just keeping in mind all the other restrictions in terms of constructability and permitting regulations and all these kind of things. So there's a lot that goes into it, yeah, for sure. Are there any questions on that? I mean, I know it's, yeah. I like to just go out and build stuff, but it's, there's a lot of hoops to jump through these days.
Regulations,
Yeah.
regulations.
Oh, yes.
So if you're gonna do things in the winter, like construction,
Yep.
the weather's gonna make a big difference
It
to
will.
delay you. So what is the best time to really do? Is in the summer, fall, or?
So if you allow the contractor to do work in the winter, yes, it will take longer because there's gonna be snow and cold weather and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, the restrictions on working in and out of the water is probably gonna be the long pole in the tent, so to speak.
I'm sorry, the
Long pole in the tent. In other words, when they can get in the water to put in their cofferdam, they're gonna have to do that as soon as they can, you know, in the fall, we'll say, to minimize the amount of time the road's closed, but then we're gonna have to negotiate on the tail end when they can take that out. And that duration is definitely gonna be longer than the amount of time that they would need to take if they didn't have that restriction. If they just got in and got out as quickly as they could, they would be doing that in, say, 3 months, as opposed to October, November, December, January, February, March, April, 7 months. You see what I'm saying? So they'll be like cruising to the finish in that sense. Whereas if they did it in April, if they started in April, then they would probably just be doing the straight 7 months. So you're probably gonna lose, I would say, 3 to 4 months off the construction schedule if you mandate that they just do it starting in the spring and don't allow winter work. If you allow winter work, it's gonna be closed a little bit longer. So there might not be as much of a benefit to the town in terms of the permitting regulations. But if you really want it closed in the winter and you don't want it closed in the middle of summer, then we wanna go the other route. So that's why we wanted to ask. And if you're indifferent, then we can allow more flexibility in the contract and they'll reflect that naturally in their bid typically, but,
So does the contract, you think it'll be the same price whether it's in the winter or
It's really hard to say precisely, because you don't know how they're
But
building
it's
their pits.
construction, so you guys are, or the feds are paying for it,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
The only thing
It's not
we're
coming out of your
paying
pocket.
for, right,
The road closure.
yeah.
Is it 20%?
That's right, of the permitting slash,
Yeah.
The design phase, but
Design,
that's all,
whatever.
that doesn't change.
that's all,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
done, yeah.
So really, from a construction point, you're right, there's no skin in the game as far as, but from a convenience factor or not,
Right,
or
just the
preference
neighbors,
factor
yes.
or not, that's where you guys definitely have that say, and
But it might push it out that much further,
yes.
so, yeah, so I mean, we really just need to know what,
So,
People.
I'll give my 2 cents and then I wanna have everybody chime in
How about
that's here.
3?
Sure, it's
Okay.
inflated.
So other times.
My 2 comments would be that I want to do our best to minimize the amount of time that it's closed. But especially the amount of time it's closed during not cold/winter, but actual snowy months. Because, for example, the detour that goes down Pearson, Pearson's actually quite steep in
Yes,
many
we've driven
areas.
it. Yeah.
Especially coming into the main road.
Yep.
And I don't want to be forcing people to do that detour, like when it's icy and snowy.
Yep. Yeah, perfectly understandable, and that's a good consideration.
But as far as them working during the winter, if it's not closed, I could care less how long they're
Right.
working on it.
Yeah,
The abutters probably care more about that, so
Right.
I'll wait to see what they say.
yep.
I only have a question on scheduled duration. So obviously, you'll have to supervise the project as well, construction administration fees and all that. So if it's, say, 12 months versus 7 months, does your fees reflect that?
So it doesn't, again, it won't, that'll all be part of the construction budget?
So
C- CE
even
is-
if it's, CM is part of the
Yes.
construction budget?
Yes. Yep. Yep. And design, I mean, so we're the engineer of record, we're gonna be part of that, but time does not affect us. Because we're not out, we're not gonna be the firm that's gonna be out on site. But there will be a contract administrator that will be, right? And so, yes, you're right, that will increase that duration. you know,
so that will increase the cost
On the 100%,
on the 100, or we'll pick up the 20?
No.
Okay, just
that's construction.
double checking what
Yeah,
you were
Good
saying.
question.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I've been through it many times.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's CE, so, yep, yep. Yes.
So I got a question on, now I'm looking at the traffic more than anything.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it make more sense to go down on Long Street and then turn down Pleasant Street instead of trying to go up over Pearson Hill or come down Pearson Hill? You come down Pearson Hill, the traffic coming down over the hill, they're flying,
Yep,
Yeah.
and you're gonna come out of there slowly.
yep,
Any big trucks are never gonna be able to make that corner and come up over the hill.
sure,
If they went down Long Street, it's completely flat, big intersection down there,
sure.
and it's an easy climb.
Yeah, we can take a look at that.
I mean,
Why,
that-
yeah, why were we
that
sending them down
might-
Pearson?
It
That
was
would
just
make
probably
the
the
most-
shortest.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Shortest
know,
paved route.
That would make
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
was,
no,
I
no, but
was,
you're right, yeah,
Yeah.
just going
Totally
straight up.
will.
So it's Long Street or Street?
Long Street, so if
you just don't wanna be picking the people
Just
up
go
there in
all
the
the
No,
way.
I
bushes.
don't want that.
Sure.
Um,
No, I
Instead of
won't.
taking your first left.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's almost completely flat all the way.
Yeah.
So, sounds like, is that up here?
Yes.
Basically, you keep going straight up there, and then it meets at the top of the hill with 127 instead of in the middle of it.
Sure. Okay,
That makes a lot more sense.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good comment, thank you.
That's why we let him come.
That's our police chief, so he knows all
Right.
about that stuff.
I didn't think I was paying.
Any other thoughts on time frame? Yes?
I just have another question for you. So, in your experience, what would be the most advantageous time for us to begin?
We're okay with either, to be honest with you. From a advantageous standpoint, I mean, again, we've heard from contractors that they like winter work. You could argue that you probably get maybe a better product if you're doing it in the summer months, because you're not dealing with the cold weather and potential freezing and that kind of stuff. So, you know, which there's something to be said for that, but we've done projects straight through winter and they've come out absolutely fine. And the contractors like it, keeps their crews busy. So that, you know, but, so as far as we're concerned, we don't have any concerns doing this project in the winter, aside from, like you said, if there are some, concerns with detours and that kind of thing, and just traffic and getting them through, the safest way possible, if that's a primary concern and.
Well, going Long Street would fix a lot of that.
Yeah, and I don't even see why we have them
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, no,
I should have been paying closer attention to that.
yeah, no, that's a good point.
Straight ahead.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Could I follow up? What I was actually asking is from the standpoint of juggling the steel and the dewatering and everything else. I'm not certain, and I don't really need to know what the course of things are, what has to come first and second and third and fourth. That's what I was concerned with. It seems like
Yep.
the water issue, I don't
Yeah.
know if the water issue should be always the first concern or not.
Well, from a permitting perspective, it's gonna dictate what they can and can't do in terms of timing. Depending on there are different cofferdam types that a contractor could propose. See, the issue that we're most sensitive to in terms of, taking the cofferdam in and out is when the steel comes. Because if you're assuming that they're gonna be, a type of cofferdam that they're gonna have to lift straight up, the bridge can't be in the way. So they can't put the steel down. If it were a type of cofferdam that they can yank out of there from the side, again, they might be able to build the bridge, the superstructure, put the deck on and everything like that before they remove the cofferdam. In other words, do all the other work, get the abutments in place, and then, if they're doing this in the wintertime, put the steel on, do the deck, and then once April hits, if we're able to negotiate that timeline, then they could take their cofferdams out. But if they have to lift them straight up, they might not be able to put the steel on until they can remove the cofferdam.
Oh.
So that's what we're being sensitive to, and that would kind of force what they call means and methods a little bit. If we hemmed them into a point where they had to design a cofferdam that they had to take out from underneath the bridge, it would potentially complicate things. But if they have a system in place that's a non-factor, and there are a few out there, but is it right for the site? The contractor's got to make that determination. So that's what we're trying to be a little bit sensitive to and not, hem them in too much as it relates to when they put it in the water and when they can take it out. And the permitting will dictate how soon they can do that, if that makes sense. So that's the concern that we have.
So to follow on from that, what it sounds like you're saying is that it's gonna be far more efficient if we, for example, let them do tree clearing and utility work in the winter, but then all of the rest of the construction is spring, summer.
That would, as far as shorter duration, yes. Yep. Yeah, that's the way it's looking based on the
ability to line
restrictions.
things up as well.
That's right.
Because
Yep.
we would also have the longer lead time to kind of make sure that we would have the steel instead of, we did it, and it was supposed to be here, but it's not.
Absolutely, and those things happen. Yep, absolutely. No, that's a really good comment. So what that would look like is really there probably wouldn't be much going on next year, and they would probably wait until 24 to 25 winter to do the clearing for the bat habitat. And then they might do the utility relocation in advance if they can get them in and out of there, because contractors don't like to deal with utility companies dictating their schedule. So if they can get them out of the way, they will. They'll do the relocation perhaps in 24, and then they're out of the way and the contractor would come through, do their thing in 25. Is probably what that's looking like, yeah. Years past, it would be a 4 or 5 month lead for steel, and they would, we'd advertise, and then they'd be ready to go in the spring, and they're happy, but it's just not the reality these days, unfortunately. So, any other questions or comments on that? This is all good stuff.
Just say personally, I don't care when the bridge gets closed because it just is gonna be safer for me to get in and out of my driveway, so
Yep,
that makes no difference to me.
yeah, okay, good. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that probably spring time frame for a start would be better. Is that safe to say, or do you want to provide the flexibility of doing it in the winter as well?
I just think people want it done.
I agree, no,
I'm assuming, right? It doesn't affect me necessarily, but.
no, understood.
So, I mean, like anything, and our winters aren't what they used to be anyways.
that's the truth.
You know, I mean, March is your worst now. I mean, it's been that way, the last 4 or 5 years?
Right.
You get all the snow in March. I don't
Right.
know. So,
Right.
frozen ground, that doesn't happen like it used to, so
Yeah.
personally,
Yep.
again, it's what these guys want,
Sure.
but I don't really think get it done as soon as possible.
And really, the steel's gonna dictate it.
It is,
That's what it boils
Right.
down to.
it is,
So you want it to be as soon as you can, the steel will dictate it.
yeah,
I mean, I've been waiting 17 months for a steel superstructure on Lake Sunapee. So,
okay, so you got it firsthand, you know?
yeah, 12 months,
Yeah,
I hope.
yeah,
But the contractor, whoever's selected for this is gonna have, this is what they do. They'll have a great relationship and they'll be able to control that a little bit better too.
yeah,
So it could be 11 months, could be 18 months, so that's the dictating factor for this. Any work that can be done prior to this, to speed up the process, the tree clearing, the utilities,
Yes.
maybe even the culverts on Detour Road and,
yep,
if all that's done, they can concentrate on the bridge, is even better. So the flexibility that we give to a contractor is gonna be key.
yeah, yeah,
Trust me, I know.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm personally all in favor for as much flexibility as works.
Yep.
With the goal in mind of minimizing the amount of time that they are both required and then likely with slippages to have to keep the road closed.
right. Yep, yep, that makes good sense. Very good, well, this is great, oh, yes.
Yeah, back to the design, just clarification. I think Taylor mentioned the east side will basically remain the same as far as location. And so it's pivoting to the south on the west end, correct? And how far?
Actually, so let me back up, it's pivoting,
Can I get your name real quick? I don't know.
Jack Chwaziak.
Thank you.
do you want to answer this one, Taylor?
Yep.
'Cause I may have misunderstood, but I thought that was opposite from going back like 3 years ago.
Yeah, so the existing bridge is in here, and again, it's hard to see.
I can pull up the design plans if it helps.
Maybe
but,
might
yeah, let me-
want people to see it a little
Sure,
bit better.
if you don't mind.
Maybe if you go to the, yeah, you
Yeah,
can see
that's
a little
good.
bit better. Yeah, so the existing bridge is right here. You can kind of see it goes straight across. So this abutment,
Very light gray.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not as light on my screen,
Yeah,
I think the lamp on this is starting to,
Yeah.
we're losing some resolution.
So this abutment right here on the east side is gonna be replaced in about the same spot. It is gonna be shifted south a little bit. As you can see, this is kind of like the end
Yeah.
of the existing abutment
Okay.
here. And then on the west side, scroll over, Greg. So this is the existing abutment right here. This
So it's gonna
extends.
wait.
So we're gonna be pushing that out to the west, this way.
Okay, but still not pivoting down.
Not as
just-
much.
Just
Not too
extension.
much.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
okay.
Yep.
yep.
So I just, yeah, the encroachment towards Frost Lane, I guess I was wondering as far as kind of the existing line, that culvert. So
Yep.
that culvert, the replaced culvert will be pretty much in the same location or that?
Yes, it is in the
Okay,
same location.
okay.
Yep,
And the other
just
que-
replacing it.
The other question, you mentioned the riprap, just
Yep.
what size riprap are you talking about and how far upstream, downstream?
So, can you go to the bridge
Yeah,
plan,
which one is
actually?
that?
Yep, that one. All right, so you can see here, we have the outline of riprap out here, so it kind of comes down this way and into the bank on this side. Is that what you were asking?
And size. and-
Just the size of the stone itself, the riprap, are we talking, 18-inch rock, are we
It's
talking?
greater than 18 inches, right?
The nominal, what class is it, you call it?
Class 3.
Class 3, that's pretty big stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of energy coming down the
Yeah,
stream.
that's the truth.
And this is really right where it starts to flatten out right under the bridge.
Right, that's
So
right,
we're carrying
lowering the size.
heavier stone.
Yeah.
And the rocks that are out there now are quite decent sized too.
Yes, yeah, there's some
So,
big boulders.
yeah, they're gonna be decent sized rocks.
Now, would there be any work on the island there, just downstream?
No.
No.
Nothing that'll all be protected or it's,
Yeah, that's beyond our construction limits.
And this, I don't, maybe a question for the town, as far as the snags that are there now, as far as on the downstream side, we got those big snags there. Is any possibility or chance of getting those cleared out as far as?
It's not part of the, I think I'm gonna skip ahead to some of the photos here.
Is that, yeah. Yeah, I know that would be a separate permit probably for, yeah.
You're talking about some of this stuff down here?
Yeah, it's just gotten built up over the, over
Yeah,
the-
we're not getting in the river that far down.
Right.
From a permitting perspective, I'm sure they would really frown on that.
Yeah.
Whether the contractor can do anything for you, but yeah, we're definitely not going
Right.
that far down, yeah, yeah.
That answers
Thank
your
you.
questions? Yep.
Yep, thank you.
Okey doke. Okay, so, just a brief update environmentally. Like I said, we're just getting started on the NEPA categorical exclusion, as part of the federal requirements. DES wetland permit, that one is, pretty much, ready to go out. We're just doing some fine tuning now based on the Fish and Game email that we got. I don't know if you were copied on that, Dana.
I was.
Yeah, and shoreline quality, that's also a permit that we're working on. And then from a cultural resources perspective, this is the other thing that we wanted to kind of touch on with the town. So because this is a federal project, that triggers section 106, and that's the National Historic Preservation Act. We, previous to this going federal, excuse me, we do a RPR, a request for project review anyways, because it's part of the state process. So we already had that in motion, and they determined that the clothespin bridge is in fact expected to be an adverse effect, or will be an adverse effect, removing it. And so from a federal compliance standpoint, what that means is that it is eligible for a listing on the National Historic Register, believe it or not. So what that triggers is section 106 mitigation, and that's what we're stepping through right now with DHR. And that's, and federal highways. So federal highway for a federal project is the lead agency. And we also go through that with NHDHR, which is the Division of Historical Resources for the state. So we're doing what they call a cultural resources meeting. I think it's May 11th. And Dana, I don't know if you're interested in going to that, but we could certainly invite you, just like we did with the natural resource meeting that we've got later this week.
Okay.
But anyhow, so as part of that, we have what are called consulting parties. And there's a whole host of folks that are engaged, from state historic preservation officers, Indian tribes, local governments, that's the town here, historical societies, so we'll be reaching out to the Webster Historical Society to engage them as a consulting party, any historical commissions. And then the last one is for anyone else, individuals or organizations with a demonstrated interest in the undertaking. So if you want to become a consulting party, you can reach out to, you can certainly send an email to me, and we will forward that to Jamie Sikora. We're working with him at Federal Highway, and they will ensure that you're looped into the process, and we solicit input from you and that sort of thing.
What
So-
could somebody change, though?
What's that?
What could somebody change, saying, I mean,
Well, it's not,
or.
there's
you know what I'm
input
trying to
into
say.
the mitigation and what we do to, mitigate for the removal of the bridge. And there's a whole host of things that can often be done, but they have to be, and we'll work with Federal Highway and the state to make sure that those are right-sized for the project. I mean, we have a very large project going on in the Seacoast now, the historic General Sullivan Bridge. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that project. That is a very big project, and the Section 106 process on that is quite involved. For a project this size, it's on the other end of the spectrum, but there's definitely input as far as we'd like to see, like sometimes we do interpretive panels and put those on site. Sometimes there's archaeological photography or archival photography that will be done. There's other things that can be done, and we'll kind of work that through with DHR and Federal Highway. And as a consulting party, there'll be a comment period and that kind of thing, and there can be other involvement that way. But you know, I mean, sorry, it won't be a covered bridge in that sense.
I know. Or Webster here.
That's a bridge too far, but anyways, there's, you know, it's hard to tell
No,
exactly.
no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep, so, like I said, you can, that's Jamie's contact info, or you could, like I said, reach out to us and we'll forward that to Jamie to put you on the list for consulting parties. Right away, that was the other hot button topic. So we've got the preliminary right-of-way plans in place, and like I said, we were here last April going over the easements. That hasn't changed, so in terms of that, that's all been, the impacts are set. We're in pretty good shape there. So what we're doing now is we've engaged a firm, OR Colon, who's going to be the right-of-way agent, operating, doing effectively what the state would typically do. And a gentleman by the name of Chip, or John Johnson, who actually used to work for the state in the right-of-way bureau. And so he is with OR Colon now, and he's going to be taking us through that process. He's going to be leading that from a property owner standpoint. We're going to be reaching out to the affected abutters, setting up property owner meetings, and then he'll be developing appraisals and all that kind of work, and tendering offers and working that through from a right-of-way perspective, getting that all buttoned up prior to construction. So the timeline on that is that would be all wrapped up. That has to be all in place prior to advertising for construction, so that would be in October. So between now and then, that will be finalized. Yes?
Will he be the guy we go to get an existing right-of-way taken away?
So I know what you're talking about, because I think we spoke last time about the line that's kind of on the front of your house, is that right?
It's halfway through my garage, halfway through my house.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one. I talked to our surveyor about that, because I know we talked about that, and they said that's where the line is. Now, no one's going to do anything to your property on account of that, but as far as adjusting that line inward or anything like that, we can certainly talk about it. I don't know how that would be handled, but that was, you know, I asked if there was potentially an error in reading that, and that's how it reads, because it's all based on the centerline of roadway and that kind of thing. So, but it won't, I should say that. The legalities of it, I can't articulate that personally, but we did look into it. So, and I think, are you interested in having that extended? Is that what you're?
I'm interested in getting it pushed out.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, we can talk with Chip about that, and I don't know how that all works. I can't promise anything, but what I can tell you is the line work that's on the plans is all based on the research and the deep research that was done. So, excuse me. So we can talk with you more, and I suggest we probably do that offline, just to figure out more of the specifics and your concerns, and they can more eloquently talk about, you know, what that line represents and how that would affect you. So, okay. And if we could take your name afterwards, I'd be happy to, you know, have them get directly in touch with you. And he probably will anyways, because I believe there's an impact to your parcel anyways. So you're going to be talking to them regardless.
Yeah.
And so that would be a good conversation to have. Yep.
Negotiation.
So I know that previously it had been said that September they would be reaching out to people, and obviously that hasn't happened at this point.
Right.
What is the actual expected, like, when he's going to reach out?
Very, very soon. So we're working through, there's an amendment that we're putting together as far as with the state, and once that's in place, he'll be reaching out and starting that process. He'll be officially under contract. So we've got all his information, and we're just putting that through the meat grinder right now.
Can you expect that when?
Very soon, very soon.
Spring?
Definitely in the spring. Oh, yeah.
Well, we are in
Yeah,
spring.
I mean, we are in spring. So
I was gonna say, which spring you talking about?
it can't be any later than May, let's put it that way. So it's gonna be very, very soon, because we're on the home stretch now, so we're basically, you know, everything's gonna be happening pretty quick to kind of get all this wrapped up. So, yeah, and it all has to be, like I said, in place before we advertise, so we're working very diligently now to get that put together. Let's see, anything else
Now,
year.
you don't have you're gonna advertise for a contractor to do this work. You don't have the advertising.
For what work?
For doing the bridge.
Constructing the bridge?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yep, yep. Yep, we'll go out to advertise, and that's gonna be a little bid, solicit bid from a number of contractors, that kind of thing. We suspect we'll get plenty of interest because of the location of the project. You know, I know a few contractors that are looking at it already. I mean, they don't have the plans, but they're asking me about it, and they're
Well, that's
interested in
what
this.
you want. You want
So-
interest,
Oh,
you
yeah.
want a good person.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of really good contractors that this is right in their wheelhouse. And it's right, almost in their backyard for a few of them that we know of right offhand.
Well, I think you've done a great job.
Yeah,
so.
no, we're excited. We're really looking forward to seeing it come together, so.
And we
Great.
want them to hurry up. 'cause we
Would
keep
you
them on.
explain to the board about the need to get another engineering firm?
Yes.
Other oversight?
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, so, yeah, so contract administration, which you mentioned. So in years past, so we're the engineer of record, and we would have historically been eligible to carry that through construction as a contract administrator, should the town or anyone choose to stay that route. It's not a guarantee, you don't have to. But the regulations have changed to where we cannot, the engineer of record cannot be the contract administrator for state or federal projects. So that, so what's gonna happen is there's a list of qualified firms, and there's two different ways of doing this. You can put it out for an RFQ, in other words, a request for qualifications, and you can solicit from anybody to present, just like we did when we came for an RFQ and submitted a proposal on this project. Same process, more or less, for doing a contract administrator. Or, that's one option, or you can go to the qualified contract administrator list that the state has, and you can solicit a minimum of 3 to provide a proposal for you and look at it that way. So there's a couple different routes. That's probably the most efficient, but if you want to just put it out to anybody, you can put it out to anybody if you choose.
When should this happen?
This should start happening, it could happen anytime. I would suggest probably in the summer. And that's one of the things that, again, we were gonna start coordinating on in terms of timing, because we wanna have that in place prior to advertising for construction. That's a requirement, so that once we advertise and then we open bids, and then they're at the pre-construction meeting, they're on board from day one, you know who it is, and they're in and they're going. And it's a requirement from the state. They need that in place before we advertise. And then we would also be on for construction support services in parallel with them, but we're not doing the contract administration. We're just doing reviews for shop drawings and RFIs, requests, or from the contractor, requests for information, that kind of thing. So we're just providing clarification and support for the contract administrator, if that makes sense, in that firm. So both of those would need to be in place before we go to construction.
Okay, I'm sure I'll be talking more about
Yep.
that.
Yep. Any other questions? We're getting close, I promise.
They don't make anything easy.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, and Taylor, you want to clarify what you've been doing from a utility standpoint?
Yes, yeah, so for utility coordination, we've identified the pole owners, which Dee, I know you mentioned them for TDS Telecom.
Uh-huh.
They own the poles in the area, so I've been in contact with their relocation engineer. So I'm gonna be coordinating with them, and we probably expect some coordination meetings to be set up in the next couple of weeks to determine a good location to relocate these poles that doesn't conflict with our proposed design. So it's underway.
Yep. And they're not really fluid communicators, unfortunately.
Oh, TDS?
Big surprise.
Don't even talk to me about TDS. They're in my bad list right now.
Right. So that's something that we're doing. So when we go into construction, the steps are basically providing an invitation to bid, and then we can, if we want, we can hold a pre-bid meeting, which is just to solicit questions and input from contractors as we're going through the bid process. And then we will respond to any questions prior to opening bids, and we'll set all that up as part of the contract book, as far as the time frame for responding to RFIs. And then do the bid opening, and we'll do that, more or less here. Open bids, and then provide a bid analysis, and then provide a recommendation to award the project to the low bidder, provided they're responsive. So, so that's kind of the bidding process, which would, like I said, we're in October to start that. And I would recommend for this one, typically we go 3 weeks, and I'm gonna ask Sally if we can do 4, just to give contractors another week to kind of look at some of this stuff. We wanna make sure we get good bids, so.
Isn't that the importance of the pre-bid meeting?
Yes.
To make sure
Yep.
that, you know.
And sometimes, and we typically do that, sometimes you do mandatory, sometimes you do non-mandatory. I think for this, we would do non-mandatory, because it's not so, unless you want to do a mandatory pre-bid. But what that does is if a contractor can't make it for some reason and they don't attend, they can't bid. So that's why we typically don't suggest doing a mandatory pre-bid, we just do a open pre-bid, and they can still bid a job if they're not there. And the time when we make it mandatory is if there's something that's very, very specific that they have to pay ultra close attention to, and we want to make sure that everybody has heard us, you know, and we don't want somebody just coming in and throwing in a bid that doesn't really understand things. This is more of a routine job in that standpoint, so we don't think there's any significant risk there.
So you'd be confident that they know what they're
Oh, yeah.
bidding on?
Yeah, because they have to be pre-qualified to bid anyways.
Right.
Yeah, yep. So remaining schedule, like I said, permit applications and ED documentation, we're looking at May. Final plan specs, we'll be submitting those probably in September timeframe, and we'll be doing the contract book, like I said, in advance of that, and we'll be working it just to give you guys an opportunity to look at that, since we'll be developing that from scratch. Advertise for bids in October this year, and then begin of construction, and I put the asterisk there because it really depends on the feedback that we got from the town here. So, so that would just be, like I said, based on whatever we determine is the best for the town. But so, and that would be the tree clearing was what would happen in the winter if they did it this year. That's, like I said, that would be probably the extent of that work.
Going back briefly to the utility coordination.
Yes.
What are, based on, you know, we've got lots of old tall trees, et cetera, and of course a view, what are the chances of coordinating that to, for example, be done like underground would normally be, so it's a conduit that's part of the bridge instead of extra hanging wires? Obviously, they have to move poles that they're attaching to
Right.
their lines anyway, but rather, like, is that a possibility for routing to assist for future work as well and resiliency, or no?
So if you mandate that, it's more expensive. And typically, the way it works for state jobs is because they're in the right of way and we're impacting, you know, they're impacting the project, they move at their cost. If we put them on the bridge, that was gonna increase the cost to the state because there's more work, there's conduit, hangers, all this kind of stuff that goes into the bridge. So I'm not saying the state would not entertain that, but we would definitely have to get approval from them to do that. And then it would also take a little more coordination because they're gonna have to temporarily relocate it anyways,
Right.
because they're in our way. So they would have to temporarily relocate, then they would have to permanently relocate onto the bridge after. So it's another operation for them too. So again, all things that can be done, but whether or not the state would participate in that, I don't know.
I thought this was all federal now.
It is, but the state is the conduit for that. Okay, so, and federal highway would also have to sign off, yes, that is true.
I think that's a good idea, though. Really.
There's a problem with the ground conduit.
What's
What was
that?
that?
There's a big problem with that, because there's maintenance, you know, to those lines and all that, so we have to give access to the utilities on that. You're gonna have to have handholds and all that
Yep.
throughout the way. And if you dig down and it's not suitable soils, it's more excavation and all that, so you have to be 36 inches down, I think, within a right of way for conduit. The size of the primaries and all that, probably running 3-inch conduits, and with all the fiber optics. So, I don't think TDS is gonna wanna take
Right.
that on either.
That's what I'm saying, like, I think that it's,
If that fills with water and freezes,
right.
TDS is gonna come back to say, well, Webster, you wanted this, you paid for it, and then you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So who maintains it at that point?
Yeah.
Great question, but
Yeah,
this is the biggest thing too.
it's, yeah, generally unlikely for a rural setting like this to do that, yeah, yeah. So next steps, right-of-way process, categorical exclusion, NEPA permitting, and then, like I said, finalizing utility coordination. We'll probably have an on-site utility meeting if they want to. We recommend it. And then completing PS&E in the fall, and then advertising for construction. That's the short view of what we're doing currently. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you all for hanging in there. Yes?
I just have one quick question. The trees that are coming down
Yes.
are up there? Do you go up as
No,
far as?
no. Nope, yeah, no, not extending up that way at all.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so, I don't know if we have the clearing limits shown, but there's the trees that are really up closer to the road on either side of the bridge, those are the ones that are.
Okay,
That are
yeah,
gonna
that
be-
makes sense.
Yeah, we're definitely not going, it's a very scenic, that would not fly.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
I have one more question, I'm sorry. I'm a trustee with the Historic Society,
Perfect,
and so we have a meeting next week, and I'm gonna be mentioning
yes,
this opportunity. They will ask me this question.
Yep.
I'm gonna ask it of you.
sure.
What exactly has been declared worthy of historic consideration
Integrity, yeah.
if the bridge is coming down?
Yep, so it's the abutments that are stone. Those are the defining characteristics of the bridge from a historic perspective. It's, and I mean, the superstructure, the beams are eligible too, but they're not significant, typically speaking. So it's really all about the stone abutments in this case.
So are you giving us historically accurate stone abutments?
No. Yeah, see, no, and that's not what's happening, but it's, what they basically do is they say, okay, you're impacting this resource, and therefore you need to mitigate, and so then we negotiate what the mitigation is. But it's not gonna manifest itself in the sense of like a stone abutment or anything like that. It would be some other type of,
Plaque.
right.
No.
Things
Because I
like
kinda
that.
asked that
But-
question, that's what I asked,
But
right?
there are other things that we did. So what we also recently did in Concord, which DHR really liked, I don't know if that translates to this town or not, but so in Concord, they had a few other historic bridges. And we identified those, and basically what DHR is kind of, instead of being reactionary and ripping out bridges that we could have maybe preserved, this one may not be a good, they don't all fit into that box, but in Concord's case, they actually do have a bridge that's historic, or it's eligible, and we can maintain it. We can fix it, and we can keep it. And so DHR is really into that because we ripped out two of the other bridges that were basically sister bridges to that we could not fix, they were too far gone. So they said, okay, we identified this one, and basically the city said, we'll pay extra special attention to this, and we're gonna use kid gloves to kind of maintain it and keep it going. And DHR said, yes, we like that. Instead of just saying, it's too far gone, we have to replace it, it comes out, we'll take some pictures of it.
Right.
So they're kind of into preservation if possible. So that might be something that could be considered here. I don't know all of the bridges in the town and if there are any others. I know there's one right up the road here that's a state job that is very historic, very interesting.
Well, this too was a covered bridge.
It was, yes.
And quite lovely.
Yep, Yep.
And then it got bigger.
Yep.
And now it's gonna be extremely big.
right.
So, not much history at all has been preserved in.
At that location. Yes. Yeah. No,
I'm upset with how big this is. I always have been.
yeah, oh yeah.
It's such a beautiful, small, intimate little section of town, and I regret that this bridge is gonna be, it's gonna be a lovely bridge.
Right.
And the townspeople are gonna
Yeah.
love flying over it and fishing from it and all of that, but,
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like the historic part of it is so much an afterthought at this point. A plaque, come on.
I know, and I don't disagree with that, but that's definitely, there's no way to make the improvements and keep those elements of
Right,
the existing
I
bridge.
understand. I do
Yeah,
understand.
because of hydraulics and stream crossing rules, there's a lot of things that kind of govern that. If you're gonna replace it, the state mandates that this is what you need to do. You need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right,
You know, if you can maintain the existing structure, then that changes things, but they don't want to throw a bunch of money at that if there are issues with doing that from a hydraulic perspective, and that's kind of the yin and the yang
I
there,
know.
so,
When
yeah.
I moved here, that bridge had wooden pylons with ropes on each side instead of the,
oh, that's quaint.
yeah, that was quaint, yeah. It's fun with little kids looking over the side
Yeah.
too.
But,
Cars looking over the side?
We've had a few cars go over into my property, I can tell you that much, both sides.
and one thing I would say is from a, from a hydraulics perspective and from what the stream crossing was before the bridge came, it's gonna be closer to that than it is now, because the existing abutment, particularly on the west side, that's why we're moving that abutment so far back. Because if you look at it on the plan perspective, it's almost like they built a little peninsula out to perch that abutment into, right? And they choked the stream way down. So what we're doing is we're opening that up, so it's gonna behave more like the original channel did. So if you look at it from that perspective, you know, we're improving the waterway and we're improving the characteristics of the stream so it can function the way that it once did. So that's,
I'll tell them that.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't fix the stone abutments, however.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ben.
Greg, are we in the clear with the Coast Guard now?
Yes, we are officially, no cutters coming up this way.
Okay. Well, I just saw a couple last week. and-
I know, yeah. We knew that was
That
coming, but we had to
surprised me
check
a
the
little.
box anyway, so, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Well, I would really like to have a covered bridge up there, but I know that's out of the question. That would be so
I think
neat.
most people would like to see.
Right,
Yeah. If I win big money, I'd put it up there.
right,
but
yeah,
Pretty slim pickings.
right. Anything else?
Unless we wanna donate, somebody wanna donate to the town.
Well, thank you all very much for your attention and for hanging in there.
Thank
Lots of
you very
information to
much for your
digest, but we're getting close. And a year from now, we'll be having a contractor on board. We'll be looking forward to actually replacing the bridge, in fact. So that'll be exciting. Less than a year from now, obviously, but, yep. So,
Related to the bridge, because of your being the engineers for it, what is the, and I know we briefly talked about this before, but what is the impact and adjustments as far as our contract with you has been concerned for this, and allotments of time and or responsibilities? Because of the change to the federal funding and
Yep,
stuff versus.
that's what we're preparing right now. And
Okay.
part of that is with Oracolin, and there's a few other nuances from a permitting perspective, and we're just kind of putting our arms around all of that and then translating that into an amendment for that. So, but the time, time extension not required, we're okay with that as is, and it's just kind of making sure that we've, got everything in a line to get us to that finish line, so.
Yeah, we had talked about that.
Okay.
And we're looking for a kind amendment, I might add.
Right.
But, yeah. But you and I had talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you all very much for your
Thank you
time,
for
we
coming.
appreciate it, thank you.
All right. I will give them a moment to sit down and take their stuff out. And then we will move on to our next agenda item, which will be the public hearing for the junkyard ordinance.
Wow.
Do you want to have a brief 5 minutes now that we're done this and let them finish, or do you want to just jump into it?
You guys don't mind?
No,
Send it, right?
Yeah, no, not at
Send
all.
it.
All right, let's do it. I don't think it's gonna be a problem, so I won't worry about stating rules of our public hearing, but we will open the public hearing at 7:49. And so this is for the proposed junkyard ordinance. The, my take from what I have been told from the planning board, and I'll let both of our folks here that deal with the planning board all the time jump in, is that this is suggested, first I'll go that this is not a ordinance for control of junkie yards. This is an ordinance
Right.
dealing with specifically junk yards or commercial type operations. And the three key points are: one, there's grandfathering for lots of the old sites, or I shouldn't say lots, but a couple old sites in town that might be affected by grandfathering. Two, that this does not change or increase any regulation. It is simply basically copying the state ordinance and enacting that at a town level instead of just a state level. And the main reason to do that is the third reason, which is that it then allows us to collect legal fees if there were ever to be a situation that the town had to be involved in a legal litigation matter for junkyards. Do I have that correct?
That's the way I understand it, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that stated, I'll go ahead and open for public comment or questions on it. Yes.
Chris Shakler, Tyler Road. So can you clarify for me what a junkie yard is, or a junkyard that is not commercial but meets the definition by the state of a junkyard?
So we'd have to go to the junkyard regulations.
Say it again?
You have to go to the junkyard regulations from the state. So when we quote what a junkyard is, it really references right to the state law. So anything under the state law is what a junkyard is.
Okay, so
And
they,
the most common thing people use is the storage or resale of car parts and the storage of 2 or more cars on a lot for that purpose.
okay, unlicensed,
Well, the license requirement was taken out a
Oh, it
couple
was?
years ago.
okay, so if somebody has 4 cars on their property, 2 of which are not used, haven't been used, I mean, is it a period of time of non-use that relegates it to a junkyard?
I'm not sure how that works.
Okay.
So the way that I would touch on that is actually the first section here, which is kind of the authority. It refers specifically to the RSAs. And so that's RSA 236, 111 through 129, and whatever amendments that the state does to them. So if you look at those RSAs, that should be specific on answering those kinds of questions.
Okay,
And that may change depending on what they do at the state house.
so so for example, Camille's,
That's not considered to be a junkyard, right?
Well,
Meaning,
it is.
meaning, he's not selling.
Well, no, it is,
He is.
because he stores a lot of unregistered
Oh, cause
cars.
unregistered cars. Cause I'm with you, Chris. Where does that fall in this?
Camille's a whole different ballgame.
so he
Right.
doesn't fall underneath this at all?
No, he does.
Oh, he does,
Because of his unregistered cars.
and everything else is unregistered, I guess, there.
Yeah.
See, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is we're all trying to wrap our heads around this, in a sense, because, you know, where does somebody that, would we also have to prove that he's selling things from his yard? It's just the unregistered cars that can be created as he's
I
looking
think
like a
it would have to
junkyard?
be judged on a case-by-case basis. By
That's-
the
Cause
board.
that's where I'm still, even myself, having a hard time, you know, or, you know, for example, people that have equipment stored at their place and like he was saying, not just cause it's a junky yard, and not manicured like we'd all like to see it, I mean, we all have that, everybody's got their opinion on that, but if somebody's buying in and then selling out of there, is that where they would need a permit? Be a junkyard? And is that the only place that we would have a right besides the unregistered cars? Is that the
I
only?
got one, yep, read it.
Yeah,
See, this to me is the hardest part about this whole thing.
Oh, it is.
and the key there is that we're matching what is already the requirement, which is what the state's doing.
Right.
And we're specifically calling out that this is what the state is doing and that's what this ordinance is. So it does get subject to change. They are considered a junkyard. There've been court cases and so on. So that's kind of covered in the history there in that case. But as far as opening up a new junkyard, or let's say I suddenly decided to put 30 parked cars, I don't know where I'd put them, but let's say I put 30 cars, in front of my house or something. It becomes an interesting question of, A, am I doing business? B, am I doing it for example, antique vehicles, which have other carve-outs in the RSAs? Am I doing it in a place that's considered visible to all of the passing public, or
Well-
within 1,000 feet of the
Right,
roadways?
right, but I mean, if you suddenly began doing business, selling things out of your property, you would then become a commercial operation in a residential
so-
agricultural.
So there's two things, so if I wanted to become a new junkyard, like do business, the two things I would have to do would be to go through the ZBA to get that change and allowance, variance, I think is the correct term. And then the second thing would be to register and go through the junkyard process, which then also triggers things like planning board and what is and is not appropriate for the area and fencing. and
Would
hiding and
would there
such.
be a public hearing associated with something like that?
Yeah, I would assume,
Yeah, I think
There were
that's.
The ZBA would
Several
definitely be a
public
public hearing, and the planning board generally is as well for any kind of site plan
Okay.
work. But that's if I wanted to go commercial and I was trying to do it. If I just had them, the real question would be, I think, are they considered to be visible to others? And so, like, if I stuck them all in the middle of my yard, that answer would be no. If I had them out by the road or right on my neighbor's line, the answer would probably be yes.
It's a lot of gray
So,
area in
yes.
this, very much
Which makes it
so.
even more scary.
Yes,
There
yes.
is.
Well,
And that's that's one of the primary reasons actually for doing this, because with so much gray area, a lot of it gets determined by a court.
Right.
And we don't wanna be in the instance where we have to deal with defending against stuff and then not able to get our
I
money
agree
back.
completely, and I'm for this ordinance. I wish it was stronger. I wish it wasn't such a conservative, sort of close to the state kind of thing, because I think the state junkyard ordinance needs to go much further and be much better enforced. The enforcement thing is the other side of this. So would it be our code enforcement officer that would be an intervener, I guess you would say, on this?
So like with other codes and stuff that are town adopted, we would be, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the process would be, for example, just like those. If a complaint came in, it would go through, we would send out our code inspector to find out what's going on and give us a report. And then as the select board, we are ultimately the quote enforcers, so
Yes.
that would then start the legal process of registered letters and
Right.
so on, cease and desist or adjust,
Okay.
et cetera.
Okay,
Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
okay.
Bottom line is, like Camille's, if they wanna listen, that's what it boils down to. We can have all the papers in the world. Everybody's been to Camille's, a little, past it, code enforcement officer's been there many times. There's many steps, a lot of court we can go through, but bottom line is, to enforce it is gonna be, revoking the property at some point somehow. And can you go that far?
And it also matters if the court sides with you,
Yeah,
because the court doesn't always side with you.
exactly, so I like this ordinance, I think it's the right step to help in enforcement, but I also want to make the realization that, if it's a towing company that stores a lot of cars or whatever, that it could be a fight, and it could cost a lot of money in the end of it, because some of it could be, this is my private property, and how far does that go? So,
That's true, it's the money at the end of the line, that's it, it's gonna
Yeah.
cost a lot of money.
who has more of it, who's willing to spend it, or who's willing to even listen?
No, I think this is a good move for the town. It's a good way to protect ourselves and gives us a little bit more teeth in the fight.
That's kind of the goal, is to make sure that we're protected when that happens, so that,
And not have to
so that we're not just
get the bill
shelling
from
out
the
legal
state for
fees
the
over and
legal
over.
fees.
All right, any further public comment on this, or questions? All right, hearing none, I'll close the public comment portion of this at 8 o'clock. And so, any questions or comments from the board at this point? Or other things that we should be asking or considering?
I'm just stuck.
Well, mainly even from the planning board, or my aspect, from starting there to here, it's really to protect the town, is the reason we're doing this. And everybody's got an opinion on what junk is and what a junk is not, and it's hard, and most of us don't wanna see, some of the things we see. But, with that being said, we don't wanna tell people what to do with their property, and, we don't wanna be over-regulated. So, I think this was our best
I think it's a great
Step
compromise and just
compromise.
matching what's
And,
already there
that's
from the
right.
state.
I
So-
think Pete
yes.
has a very good point,
Yep.
in the fact that I've lived through this
I
before.
bet you have.
And I've lost more cases than I've won.
Yeah.
And spent a lot of money. Not that, but I guess I'm just saying that you have to know that it's a hard thing. This is the man's inventory, how dare you don't even say anything,
And I know everybody's got an opinion on that, of course. And I
Yeah.
think, again, we don't want to be
Well, if you had a
an
junk
overregulated.
license, I get it.
Right, yeah, right. And we don't want to be an overregulated town either, it gives us a little bit of room.
Starts
Yeah.
a conversation.
Right.
And again, that's the difference between, this is a junkyard ordinance, not a junky yards.
I know, I like how you say that,
So,
yes.
Because those do exist.
Oh,
and those are
really?
really expensive to litigate with.
Yeah.
Not so difficult to talk to people about.
Yeah, well, because it's their stuff,
So, to clarify, our process at this point, since we've gone through this, we've received the basically unanimous feedback from town meeting as well to continue moving forward with this. We, at this point, just need to make a motion and then sign
Motion
it.
to adopt and sign.
Okay,
It doesn't necessarily have to happen at this meeting, it could happen at another one, but the hearing had to
would the
happen.
board like to do that, or would the board like to wait?
I assume you wanna go.
I say we make a motion to,
Sounds good. Do we have a motion to accept the, what's that technical name for this here? Just go back to the top of it.
Town of Webster, New Hampshire ordinance for control of junkyards.
Yes. Do we have a motion to accept that?
I'll make a motion.
All right, and I will second it. So let's do the roll call vote on it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Well, okay.
Okay.
All
Okay, whatever.
ayes, it's unanimous.
And we just need you
I
to
was
sign
trying to
one.
make it a little more official for the ordinance.
We've been
but
out
that's
for a
okay.
week.
Go sign it.
Oh, God.
Should
All
put better
right.
signature lines on there, I didn't even think about it.
Well, wait till you see mine.
But it has approved by,
Okay.
just sign it and then put the date underneath.
Just right here. You want us to start here?
Yep, just approved by,
Okay.
sign it.
All right. So that is adopted, and that moves us on to, actually, let me I believe it's effective after
My
60
gosh,
days,
you
is that
really
correct?
wrote your whole name. Oh,
Is
sorry.
that written in the bottom of it?
I would have to double check,
I think that's
but I
what
don't have it in
is.
front of you because I gave you my copy.
Because I just wanted to announce that to people, but I'm not quickly finding it while I scan through it, so.
I believe there is a
I think
period of
there is a
time
period of time.
before it takes effect. and I
Send
think
that all the way
60
back
days.
down.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, that moves us on.
45 days.
Oh, 45 days, okay. So that moves us on to old business, the town-owned property, Guideboard Hill.
Well, this was the property on Guideboard Hill. It's a 5.3 acre parcel. It is, Guideboard Hill, as you know, is a Class 6 road, and this lot may not be a buildable lot. The minimum bid for the property was $27,000, which was calculated from the amount owed when the town took the property, the amount of lost taxes that the town did not get during the time between the time the town took it and now, and the legal costs involved. $27,000 was the amount came up for the minimum. We received 2 bids. Shall I open them?
Please,
Please.
that's why we're here, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't, you know.
Just to see you.
You stuck with me. First I've sliced one right in
Yes,
half.
I saw.
This bid was put in by Benjamin Nato, 294 White Plains Road here in Webster. His bid is $17,000,
Just the minimum part.
so it's below the minimum bid.
Okay,
by
I was gonna say,
10,000.
yeah, that doesn't meet the minimum, okay?
And see if I can slice his in half.
You'd have to kind of go in a different direction.
Okay. This bid is from Granite Roots Holding. Is that?
Yep.
Is that what, am I right? And it's Peter Swislowski.
Yep.
Very nice.
I know.
I kill it usually.
I
This bid is $28,000,
All right.
and he is at 918 Battle Street.
So we have the financial portions of that, just to ask the question, did anybody include in their bids non-financial portions?
I see no financial
No additional
issues
pieces.
included with the bid.
Okay. Does the board have any objection then to accepting the highest applicable bid?
I don't,
Yep.
All right, and I would move that we accept the highest appropriate bid.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So you are granting the bid to Granite Roots
Yep.
Holding
Yes.
for the amount of $28,000.
And I'm sure you know this already, but Dana will hook you up with all the paperwork.
Yep. Well, I'm surprised.
Now, I thought that was I thought part of that was a request to have it put up for bid by a outside party.
Well, you are absolutely correct on that, Chairman, in a way. However, that party did not bid, and I'm wondering if it's because of the road status. I don't know, but
That would make sense. Okay.
It's good enough for a driveway.
All right. So that moves us on to our new business. which we have starting with the town solar array. So,
We're talking across the street, right?
yes, we are talking about the one that's already existing across the street next to the school. And I will try to do the very brief catch-up here for what we are talking about. The solar array is sitting there, it is currently functioning, it's currently providing us power, etc. The monitoring of that has not been undertaken by the installers, which were Granite State Solar. There does not appear to have ever been a contract to do so. So that's not like a fault thing. That's something that we are just making sure that we are painfully aware of now, because the monitoring portal that has been put on the website and so on has not shown data for a year. That data does still exist in the systems across the street, and the metering data, of course, comes across in billing, but the ability to look at the hardware to do further diagnostics by Granite State, for example, when something may go incorrect over there, and to have all of our graphs and projections and stuff that we generally use for example, putting together reports for the town out of the Energy Committee of how much has been produced, etc. All of those sorts of things are not really possible without the portal having that connection to the solar array over here. The reason that has happened is because the cellular modems that are over there were all 3G, which of course has been discontinued. And so the way to fix that is to put in 5G modems that are the upcoming, and so they will continue to function throughout the expected lifespan of the solar array, providing that data. Any of the cell modems that you would get for a purpose like this, be they the original ones or the ones that we would get now, typically come with a 5-year prepaid plan as part of their package, and so all of that's rolled up into the cost, which is why it's not like, you know, $100, $150 modem. Dana has the quote, which I believe is it's roughly $2,500, doing all of the research for if I went and found wholesale the modems to put in without any labor or anything like that. They're almost $500 a piece, and we're talking 4 of them. So very reasonable as far as the quote amount that we were given by Granite State to put them in. And the Energy Committee, after meeting, recommended that we do this. And to save the long conversation, I had been trying to meet with Fred and the IT at the school to see if we could do this over Wi-Fi and similar. And so we'd have more of a one-time payment instead of a possible recurring later on. But that would involve probably part of their staff, and more importantly, then someone associated with the town would have to be able to maintain and deal with the portal, as opposed to saying, hey, Granite State, go fix this. And while I can do that, I don't want to put the town in the position of it's Dave or bust. So it made sense not to suggest that we continue down that path further. And so that's one of the reasons why the Energy Committee is now recommending that we move forward with this replacement. My question for Dana would be, are we expecting to have enough still in the ARPA funds that we could use that for this? Or would we have to take it out of our technology fund?
Currently, we have sufficient in the ARPA funds to take it out of ARPA.
Okay,
I
and
know
that's,
you would-
that's including our expected purchases out of ARPA that are upcoming as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So My recommendation would be that we use the ARPA funding for that. The Energy Committee's recommendation is that we move forward with doing it. And so that's where we are. Any questions or? I know I look at you because she's heard most of this on the Energy Committee already.
No, I don't have any more questions, no, I mean, gotta do what we're gonna do.
Would this mean, bear with me with a dumb question, but you said the portal would be a new portal that we could monitor?
So the existing portal, as done currently,
Yeah.
is maintained by Granite State as a branded thing. And that would continue to be the case. We would actually be reporting all of the back data into it. It would catch up, in theory, and be reporting forward.
Okay, so right now it's not working.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the portal's there, you can see it, you can see information about this, but none of the production numbers and none of the back-end ability for Granite State to go look at, for example, the diagnostics logs and stuff, none of that exists right now.
Perhaps we could get Leslie Palmer's name on it.
Yes, hopefully they can accommodate all of that.
Yeah.
They did mention that they could set up new accounts and stuff for us in that process, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Do
So
we
you
need,
want a motion
yeah,
to-
we probably need a motion for the ARPA, or will you come back with that for us?
Usually I would come to you with what
Okay.
the amount is, so I mean, either way, but
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna ask you to sign
Yeah, the PO.
the approval anyway, so you could wait if you want to.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
consensus is move forward and we can sign the PO and make the ARPA motion at a further meeting.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
look at us moving right
All
along.
right, that brings us to annual reappointments. Do we have people that have submitted themselves for reappointment?
We have, I mean, you know, we try not to scare them away. These are, current members, in fact, I think they're all current members that have agreed to be reappointed to their respective committees.
Dee, I gotta beg to you real quick.
What?
ZBA, you can stay on it, or you?
Yeah.
Well, then we gotta reappoint you, we need paperwork.
Oh my gosh, I don't have paper.
I thought you
for
said
you.
you weren't gonna do it, but I was gonna beg you at this meeting.
What, just
so I
on
could-
ZBA?
Yeah, on the
Why wouldn't I
ZBA.
wanna do it?
Cause you mentioned it.
Did I?
You did.
I'm a sucker, you know that. No, I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay,
So the first one I have is, for Conservation Commission, Elizabeth Janeway, for a 3-year term,
okay.
expiring in 2026.
Do we go each one separately, or can we just do them all?
Well, you're gonna, I'll tell you all their names if you wanna just.
Yeah, let's hear
If
all
you
of
just
them.
wanna have the secretary cast one
What if we
vote.
say no?
Well, that if you have a problem, that's gonna be.
Then you
Also-
find somebody else to replace.
I know,
Also,
right?
for Conservation Commission, as an alternate, Isabel Britnell. Right now, she's a regular member, but she wants to become an alternate. That's also a 3-year term. ZBA, Guy LaRochelle, for a 3-year term, and his is an alternate, right? Barbara Corliss on the ZBA for a 3-year term as a member. I don't have paperwork on Normandy Blake, but Normandy
We should do
Blake
her
is an
separately,
alternate.
cause she can't vote on herself.
Fair.
Okay, good idea.
Okay, good idea. Planning Board, Craig Fournier, 3-year term, and that's a separate
That's a
item.
separate one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I make a motion, we accept all those,
Second.
except Normandy Blake.
Yeah, right, yeah, leave her out. Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we
Okay,
get a motion
so-
for D on the ZBA.
What is the length of term for D then? Is it the same
It
3
would be
years?
3 years.
Yeah.
3 years.
I thought they weren't supposed to be overlapping or the same time frame.
One's an alternate, 2 are main members.
Okay,
Oh, so get back to your real.
Yeah, that's right, my maha.
It's a 3-year sentence.
It's a 3-year
Yeah.
sentence, if she would choose to accept it, which she did, so we have to make a motion.
Okay.
Well, we can bring it to the next meeting, but I think it makes sense to do it now.
might as well do it.
And I'll bring you the paperwork next
And
time.
then we have
So I
the,
would move that we accept the application of Normandy Blake to the ZBA.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
For a
And
30-year
abstain.
term.
Well,
Yeah.
should I have to abstain? I'd but I don't know if I can.
There's nothing that technically says you can't, but it makes sense to abstain.
Okay, I'll abstain.
Then the next
Oh,
one
I'm supposed to
is
sign
the,
this.
I think
on the
so,
schedule.
even the top line view.
Hey, pay attention.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The appointment of the building, you were so efficient, I don't know how to handle
Well,
it.
I'm sorry.
Per the zoning ordinance, you have to reappoint the building inspector every year. if you want
Oh,
to use the
okay.
building inspector.
All right.
So I put Tom Bay's name forward, he's amiable to do it. So
Okay.
if you want him,
Keep it.
If not,
Sounds like a plan.
find a new one.
Sign that
I would
man
move
up.
that we accept
Volunteers.
I would move that we appoint the existing code and building inspector as the code and building inspector.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Look at us go.
Wow.
maybe we
I
can
thought
get
it
that
would be
amendment
like
since it's
midnight.
not
I
annually.
think we need Peter,
Oh,
right?
no, 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 no.
Oh, come on.
I make
All right.
much trouble.
That makes it better.
That's what we need.
Just ask Chris.
But you're smiling, so come on. you know?
That's why I'm still smiling.
That moves us on to intents to cut and abatements.
Just got 4 intent to cuts to sign.
And
I've already reviewed them, the taxes are paid.
Good, taxes are paid.
And while we do our signing of these, do you want to go over abatements, or do we have any?
We only have one abatements for a camper, she passed away, and so we're asking that we have the ability to. Her daughter already paid it, but since she passed away, we feel like
The daughter will be
This
staying
is
there.
camping at the
Cozy
campground? Okay.
she didn't get to utilize
right.
the site or anything, obviously. No.
So while we go through that, I'm going to actually no, I won't take it out of order. Do we have correspondence that you would like to share with us?
I do have correspondence. There is a piece on there that wasn't on your agenda,
Okay.
you know, that,
This
Is that the
is,
handwritten one?
this
Or
is the
something
letter
else?
yeah.
from the code complaint that you asked me to
Oh.
draft. So that's just there if you wanna sign it, or if you want me to go back and change it, I can go back and change it. Then I intend, like with all code complaints, I'm gonna send a copy of the regulations and the complaint that we received, so that the person has all the documents we have.
So we'll pass this one the opposite direction for
Okay.
signatures, just to try and make things tougher.
Oh, she doesn't even live there.
Other correspondence?
I do have some correspondence.
No, let's go that way. She
We
didn't
received a
live
letter from HEB Engineers. They're very interested in representing you in the construction phase of the Clifton
They're
Bridge
reaching out.
project,
there. Wow.
which, you know, they're,
I'm very happy that we have interest, and
You know.
we'll make sure we inform them when we get to that stage.
I will do that. I gave you a copy of the letter that we sent to the state regarding the local match commitment for the hazard mitigation update that is due this year. There is a match required of the town. A lot of it can be in kind, which would be for my services managing it.
And can you explain that a little bit further?
Sure, what would you like to know?
What are we actually doing and paying for?
Well, every 5 years, you're obligated for the town to have an updated hazard mitigation assistance. And this is the local planning commission that is the experts on that, and they will review what we have in the 2018 and suggest to you additions in the 2023. I've always thought that, you know, you could sit down and do it yourself, although there's a lot of things that are more technical planning type parts of it that it makes sense to have the planning commission do it.
Okay, so this is that we're working with the Central New Hampshire.
Central New Hampshire
Okay.
Planning Commission.
My comment to that would be, one for inclusion as an area, which is, we do not currently have disaster mitigation or relief in our handbook/manual for any sort of cyber attack or ransomware. And as a town, especially being a small town, we're actually a high target for that. And so that should be included in there.
Okay, I'll make a note of
Do you have any further?
that. Oh, yes.
Okay.
I also gave you a copy of the memorandum of understanding with the, Mr. and Mrs. Rice at 833 Battle Street regarding their willingness to give up their driveway cut,
Which is amazing.
which is very nice. I gave you the notice from the tax collector, Karen King, about the paperwork that she has to fill out to confirm that the final tax bill was sent and what date.
To go back 1 second for that driveway cut, when that is, do we have to wait until that is completed before we file for
Yes.
the new driveway permit for the safety building?
Because part of him getting us the permit is seeing that that one's gone.
Okay.
Yes, we do. But that should be hopefully rather quick.
Hopefully.
Oh, yes.
We received a notice of a meeting at the Warner Town Hall, which is taking place next Thursday at 6 p.m. regarding the Davisville Bridge on Route 127 that is being replaced.
This is the one right at the end of 127, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, bridges are getting replaced everywhere.
It's not important, this is the ZBA approval.
And,
You wanna do that?
and I would make the comment that they have specifically mentioned that that
Oh,
public
okay.
hearing will be
You can do it.
Thursday, April 27th at 6 p.m. With it opening at 5:30. And if you have questions or comments about that replacement project, because that's our other major way in and out of town, please go attend the Warner public hearing on that. I think that's all of the ones that were in the packet.
Yeah, that's all I had, Dave.
Okay.
Yep.
So I will comment on the last one that you sent out that we kind of got, which was on community power. It's someone trying to say that they wanted to opt out, et cetera,
Yeah.
because of their situation. First, none of that's happening now, and so you can't opt out because there's nothing that's being made available. You will absolutely be allowed to opt out, and that's it, that you're gonna get a mailer if you're eligible to be part of it. When it happens, you can just check it off and send it back. You can call the number, or you can go online. All three will be options to very, very easily and quickly opt out. The second thing that I wanted to touch on, though, is they mentioned specifically because of net metering and solar and being owed amounts. And as of right now, because the utilities are not in compliance with the regulations and processes that the PUC put forward many years ago, unfortunately, it's actually not possible to opt in net metered customers automatically because of issues such as were brought forward by the letter. And so if all of those can be addressed appropriately before launch time for community power, then they may become part of that opt-in and so they would just choose, no, I don't wanna change. But until, one of the things that's very nice about community power in the way that we're working through it all is we're all involved. And so when there's an issue with a subset of, well, it may not, it's probably not advantageous to these people. They're actually being purposely left out of the opt-in. And so I would just state that going forward, that is the continued mode of operation for community power to continue making those kinds of choices. But if you want to opt out, it'll be really easy, but you can't do it yet because it doesn't exist yet.
I think we explained that to the gentleman, and he wanted to send a letter, which I said, fine, it would be fine, so, which is why I sent it to the committee, the two members of the committee.
Yeah, and so I would simply state that him saying that he wants to opt out is fine, but providing it to the town in this manner when said program doesn't exist is not a legally binding thing.
He knows that.
Okay. So, all right. Did we get any others that maybe we should touch on, or are we good for correspondence?
No, that was
Is
it.
your folder empty yet?
My folder was empty.
Okay, good.
All
I
right.
got a couple more things.
Oh, Russ says he has some more, there's always one.
Well, this is for signing.
Oh, I have a lot of stuff to
I'm
sign.
signing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we go into signing and minutes approvals and all that fun, that brings us to public comment.
Nope.
Good.
Well,
All
that's the
right.
point.
There you go.
So go ahead
Going home.
and,
Have a good night.
Thank you for
I
coming.
guess we've got our
Thanks.
draft minutes.
Nice
Thank
to
you
see
very
you
much for
smiling.
coming
Thanks.
and for your comments and questions.
Have fun. Thank you guys.
Let's see. So we have our draft minutes, of which there are two because of non-public session.
Dave, did you find anything wrong with them?
He's actively looking.
No, the only thing I was, what is the? I probably should have thought of this earlier, or maybe someone else should have, but what is the time frame for sealing of minutes?
You have to do it during the,
Do at the same time.
I'm pretty sure there's a time frame you're allowed to do it, but it can become public if someone asks between them, but.
I think you have to do it.
I'm not aware of that, but I'll check it if you'd
We
like.
can check, but
I'm pretty sure 2 weeks later, we're beyond it at this point, but.
I think
Really?
you have to do it during the session.
Okay.
But I will check into that in the event we're not correct.
It's possible.
Because that was the one thing that I was considering for the non-public, is that we probably should have sealed those. Based on the somewhat detailed
Can't we seal them now?
amounts.
No, it's,
No,
we're supposed to seal them at the time.
But other than, not that it's gonna be damaging or anything, but
Is
just,
what it is.
just as a matter of course, it probably would have made sense to do. Any questions or comments or amendments to the minutes?
Looks good to me.
I make a motion to accept the.
Second.
All in favor?
God, yes, I didn't have to finish my sentence.
Wow.
Look, we're like a wheel that is well greased.
Yes.
All right, so, hit us with those signatures, I guess.
Okay, we
Or do we
have,
have any motions?
I have no motions. No second-hand emotions, not at
No.
all.
You just take explaining, oh yeah.
The manifests need to be signed. We have one ARPA check that was written out of one of the manifests, and the other is the regular, general fund. The payroll, which we've already paid.
So that's what the audit costs?
I'm not sure if that's the complete cost. I
Okay.
imagine it will be more when they're done.
Ouch.
Yeah, yeah. It usually runs 15,000.
Okay. Oh, this is for people to get
And
paid.
remind me, VRC for the ARPA is which?
VRC is the record retention program.
Okay, thank you.
At the last meeting, the chief brought you a purchase order for electronic security protection, and then I gave my speech about the the cash flow, but I didn't get you to sign the purchase order, so if you would do that, that would be great.
And
I believe you approved it.
is that one also an ARPA?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wait, I don't, that one isn't enough.
It's not.
No, that's not enough.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, it's not.
That's not.
Would that fall under the ARPA funding? Or,
Well, the ARPA funding is based on the loss of revenue, theoretically, so we could put it through as an ARPA.
and are we, how, do we have to change process for it at all in order to?
No, because I'll still come
Okay.
to you with,
Okay.
if and
We
when
were
the bill comes.
tight on funds, I thought.
Yeah, it is getting tight.
We are, it's, and I don't wanna, it's
And
not,
is-
it's not a crisis, but I'm
Was
down to my
that
last million, and also know that I've got 2 school payments coming up.
Was that expected to come out of general funding or out of the, maintenance upgrade, whatever fund for the?
I believe it was general fund.
General fund for, through,
Okay.
we have enough in our maintenance line.
Yeah.
If we can cover it with ARPA instead, I'd be all for that. I don't know how, like, we keep saying that, so I don't know where what we're expecting to have left versus where we are now actually is on the ARPA funding, but.
Right now, we have about $60,000 left in ARPA. We still have some money committed for the record retention program.
Then the
And we
signage.
still have money committed for the remainder of the town hall fob system. I think we'll be all right, and I'll do a spreadsheet, and I know you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, cause there was also the signage and, there
You
was
just keep
the,
coming back.
I don't think there's a better way to spend a Monday night. The support trailer.
Right.
I think there was another item, and I'm forgetting it right now, but, I just wanna make sure that since.
Were we gonna take the support trailer out of ARPA? I mean, that
I
was.
thought so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about the sign and the support
And
trailer.
so,
That
that's why I'm
was-
trying to make sure that, like, I know we were committing close to our amount. And since we've now added that, if we add this too, I just wanna make sure that we're,
Well, I'll have to do my.
Not
I mean, I
overcommitting
wasn't-
it.
I mean, not that $2,000 is gonna make or break us in that, but, I think we should, I will do a spreadsheet on that and give.
so, actually, so I would suggest that we definitely take this out of ARPA. And if by some reason we don't expect to have enough left in ARPA, then what you bring back for the motion for the solar upgrade can come out of the technology fund instead of the ARPA fund.
Mhm.
Cause that would definitely fall under either.
Did
one
I
as well.
understand you right when you said the solar upgrade would be?
Yeah,
25?
About 2,500. Marty sent you the quote.
He did.
So, and me too, but I don't have it right in front of me, so.
And neither do I, just wanna.
Talk about the cow beer at some point,
Yeah, let me get through this, Russ.
I'm just.
These are, I just need your signatures, these are
None
the
of you signed
forms
this one as you passed it down.
Oh, did it, I was thinking that.
from the town meeting. One is, I need a signature for the MS 636, which is the proposed budget, and the other is the MS 232, which is the actual budget. So that's just housekeeping.
These been fully signed.
Thank you.
This one thing, sitting here is amazing how much the state tells you what to do.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like holy moly.
Absolutely. And you have to go on the computer to do it, you have to go online. I'm feeling like the bus has gone by me and I
Yeah,
missed it.
yeah.
But it's not all bad, but
No, but it's
It's
just amazing how
it's
much
just- there's a lot of
they,
stuff.
Back
Yeah.
that way.
I can tell you in Vermont, there's no such thing. You just do it. No
Yeah,
state, no
yeah.
decide anything.
and that's
Yeah.
interesting, but
It
even
is.
on the, like, more close to my heart is intent to
Oh,
cuts.
jeez.
They tell you guys, the town, what to do and how to do it, and then they enforce it. It seems weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean,
I do.
considering,
That's pretty
and that,
worried.
I never, and just like what I just signed, or the, oh, you have to do this because the state said, it's like,
Yeah,
and they don't even get anything really out of it,
right.
which is weird. Cause I kinda just learned that intent to cuts came from when you have your, cause it feels like double taxation at times, but it comes from the fact of current use property, right? So you have your land in current use, taxable's like $10. So if you're gonna make money off it by cutting your trees, the town wants to get some of that money. So that kinda makes sense to me.
I have, my current use lot this year cost me $56.
Yeah,
You have to sign it.
Yeah.
which is probably more than your tax bill is, if it was just on property.
All right.
Then I have, the authorization for,
Flip it.
these were the Unitil bills that were debited to the bank account, because I didn't have enough credit in my credit card.
So they just,
Should we be adjusting the credit card policy to?
No,
account
because
for
that was
this?
just a fluke.
Okay.
That was, the fire department bought a fire infrared gun.
Oh, what?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, for the chimney, see how. And then this is for payment of the credit cards, which is a debit to the bank account.
gee, so why are you always the biggest?
Mine
Is that,
mine is
is
big
that
because I work the
99?
hardest. That was a good answer.
That was a good answer. That was better than when I was giving you a hard time about it.
Can I go over mine yet, Dana, or are you still anymore?
Yes, Russ, you may go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So as part of the 5-year reval, I am auditing our property files for the tax credits and exemptions. And as part of that review, I found some that are missing the application. So I notify the owners, and then they, with the paperwork, and they refill it out, and then we have to get it re-signed. And then I have to refile it. So these are 2 people that didn't have an application on file, so I have them resubmit it and re-sign it.
Huh.
So the 2 are.
Oh, you're starting to do the folder thing too.
I learned from the best.
You have to buy a lot of folders.
Hey, they're cheap.
Thank you.
Keeps you straight and narrow.
So I think the signature line's on the back.
And what is the tax credit for? Oh,
100% of the solar
Yeah,
value.
yeah. Cool, wait a minute, don't sign it in the wrong spot, no, over here,
It's
right?
on the back, yep.
Whew, that was close, I almost became underneath that.
I invest in some of those
Yeah.
little signature spots, so I can put the little tabs on it.
Yeah, yes,
No,
please
Marlo,
do.
It's part of their property. Wait, what?
I have prepared a deed for, property we sold 2 weeks ago, and I will prepare the one for the property you sold tonight. We need to have it notarized, and Russ is waiting for a new stamp, so,
My stamp ran away.
Oh,
we'll,
did you lose your stamp?
I make no comment.
Oh, that stinks.
I think it might have
He
fallen
put
in
it
the
someplace
trash.
safe.
Right, that's what I always say.
No, I notarized something and I left it on my desk, but it was next to the trash can, so I'm
And you're
wondering if I
wondering,
just bumped it
yeah,
and then it
yep.
fell in the trash.
That sounds about like it happened.
I've had that happen.
It's someplace very safe.
Oh, and you
Because
must be
I've had
just,
Brenda look for it, when she's doing the cleanup, and
Yeah.
like maybe it went under a desk or something, and
Yeah.
I've been looking for it, and I can't find it. And nobody would take it, cause nobody else can use it but me.
just as a side note, we're having problems with the copy machine and the scanner. And so,
We've had-
if we can't get him to resolve that, I may be back to you.
Right.
We do have money in the trust funds for that. And we
What, buy a
kinda-
new one?
And we,
Well, it's either buy a new copier and move that up, or try to purchase a separate scanner, cause it makes it very difficult to add stuff to the digital files. If I
Oh.
can't see it, if I can't scan it.
Is
I think
it
we're
only
getting
in the
close to
scanning
new copy
portion that
time.
it's a problem, or is it
Yeah.
also
It's
not
starting,
copying?
it's also starting to cause problems with the printing portion of it too, I've noticed it's been touchier lately.
So you got Phil?
you know.
We've
Bill-
had it come out
He's a
twice
great guy. He
already.
does my, he does
Yeah,
my.
well, Phil's the one that's told me, Dana, you're really pushing the envelope, I can't get past for you, so I said, oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah,
He's a good guy.
He didn't tell you
though.
just to hit it, kick it?
well, I've done that already. That's before he comes.
Just to make sure you got all the, you know, the bats out
He's
of it.
been doing my stuff for
Yeah,
years.
he does a great job.
I mean,
He does.
it really,
Timely.
that's really been a workhorse for the town, and it was
Well,
a-
matter of fact, see if now
it was a
if I
gift from
would give
the-
you my copier if I quit my job. But,
You all set, Russ?
I'm all set.
Okay. I'd like to have a non-public session under that,
Who reads it?
Under what?
under one-liners.
I
There you
even
go.
typed it out,
That's awesome. I like it.
I
Oh,
know.
personnel, okay. So, time is, any further public comment or,
Not
business?
for me.
No.
Okay. So, I would move that we enter non-public under personnel, at 8:45. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we will, as per usual, immediately adjourn following the non-public session, so there will not be a resumption of the meeting